And the answer is, if buyers can't see a distinction or differentiation among offers, they'll create a difference of their own, generally based on price and or availability. So the story I'm going to tell you goes back to a prior lifetime when I was a civil engineer. And we were invited to quote or propose on what was called a grade separation project. And what that is when you have a railroad and an at-grade crossing of cars and trucks for both safety and to speed commutes and so on. What they want to do is separate those either with an overpass or an underpass, and they tend to be fairly good-sized projects. This was a number of years ago, but adjusted for inflation in 2023 dollars, it was about $1 million fee in engineering. And we were, and probably in 2023 dollars, probably a $15 or $20 million project. So good-sized project. And we were invited, through an RFQ, the typical thing, request for qualifications, and then based on that, they tend to narrow the field somewhat with RFPs, request for proposal, and based on the proposals that they receive, then they would winnow that down to 3 to 5 companies that would then be invited in for detailed interviews and a selection made and so on. And we went through all of that, and we were selected as the firm to do the work. And because it was an approved project, the funding and so on was in place, it was actually, our contract was placed on what's called the consent calendar of the County Board of Supervisors. And that means that it's going to be bundled with a bunch of other things. So right after they do, the Pledge of Allegiance and roll call and a couple of other administrative things, then they do the consent calendar, and all of these things get approved with one vote, and they just sort of go whistling through, and then they get on with other items of business. And so we were told that our contract would be on the consent calendar. We don't even have to fly down. We were in Northern California. And we said, oh no, we'll be happy to come down. And we did. So I flew down with our structural engineer, Ralph Van Heerden, and we were sitting right in the front row, and they did the Pledge of Allegiance, roll call, and so on. And when they came to the consent calendar, our item was removed, along with a couple of other minor things, and then the rest went whistling through, and then they deal with the things that they took out. And when they came to our contract, one of the supervisors asked, "Can you tell me how this firm was selected?" And the county engineer went on to talk about, the process, how we had qualified and so on. And so this same supervisor said, $1 million is real money. Is there anybody here from that firm today? And Ralph and I both stood up and said, yes, sir, here, happy to answer any questions. He said, well, I do have one question for you. Do you have an office here in San Bernardino County? And we said, no, we don't. We have offices throughout the state, but in fact, we don't have one here in the county. So he turns to the county engineer. He said, so these other firms that you interviewed, are they also qualified? And he said, yeah, we were down to 3, and all 3 could do the work. So he just queries the entire audience and says, is there anybody here from company number 2? And it was silent, and, we breathed a sigh of relief. No, there isn't. So what about company number 3, which was a competitor we knew well called DeLuc Cather? And some guy in the back of the room says, yeah, we're here. And so the supervisor says, let me ask you the same question. Do you have any offices here in San Bernardino County? And that individual said, no, we don't. At which point I started breathing again. So he goes, you there in the front row, company number 1, are you doing any part of this work with a company? Do you have any share of the work that you're going to do with a company here in San Bernardino County, the way it's set up now? And I said, no, we don't. Okay, fine. You in the back there, are you sharing any part of this work with a company here? And he said, yeah, we are. And just like that, this politician said, I recommend that since they're all qualified, let's keep some of that money here in San Bernardino County and pay some salaries here in our own county. I recommend we give it to that firm in the back that's going to do just that. And with that, they just picked that check right out of our pocket and put it right in Duluth Cathars. And that was a real eye-opener for me. So there was no distinction among the engineering firms in terms of our ability, but there was in terms of our approach and our connection, to this political process. So I actually found out the name of that individual standing in the back of the room. His office was in San Francisco, and I went and met with him. And it turned out that he not only knew the political landscape, but he also had decades of experience with railroad operations. And there was no way that I was going to sort of outfox him in that arena. And so I started looking in other areas. And there's a lot of conversation these days about value add, and I've certainly spoken about that in our levels of relationship video that you can see on our YouTube channel. I talk about as you move up through levels of relationship, certain things, product related specifically, tend to be less important because you're bringing other things to the table of value. In other words, you're adding value, or the expression value add. And what I learned was that these projects, which again were significant, were funded, 3/4 of that, 75% of them funding came from the feds, and 12.5% came from the affected railroad. And then the remaining 1/8, or the remaining 12.5%, was paid by the jurisdictions where this place would either be a city, and typically a city and county would combine, because again, we're talking about reasonable dollars. And so the usual approach to these interviews after you had made your proposal and, quote, made the cut, and were now going to be brought in for an interview, is you'd bring 3 to 5 folks, and generally they have a panel of 3 to 5 people, another engineer, maybe the city manager, the usual suspects. And the sales guy, the biz dev guy that I was, would typically kind of be Mr. or Ms. Congeniality and introduce everybody. So-and-so, principal of our firm, to show commitment and, tenure. Here we have our project engineer and project manager. We have our structural engineer. We're happy to answer any questions. And we have a brief presentation we'd like to make. That's the usual thing. And then at that point, the biz dev guy would sit down, and basically that would be it. I had an opportunity to do something a little different, because even though I was a registered engineer, what I had gotten smart about was grantsmanship and the money part of this thing. And so when I got up, I said, again, delighted to be here and want to introduce the members of the team, a principal and project manager, engineer, and so on. But here's the thing that I want you to understand about our time together today. However many firms, and there was always this thing, you either wanted to be first or last, either to make a good impression or to make a lasting impression. And if there were 3 to 5 firms, you didn't want to be in the middle. We didn't care. And here's how I started. Everybody you're going to talk to today, everybody you're going to interview today, is capable of doing this work, just like they were in San Bernardino County, although this was up Sunnyvale, Northern California. The thing that I want you to know is, not only is everybody capable of doing the work, we all went to the same schools. We all have the same license, and we are all designing to the same standards. So rest assured, everybody else can do this work. And typically what they will do is bring sets of plans and talk about their prior experience. What those firms will get you is a good set of plans. What we will get you is a bridge. And they were all like, what? And instead of, introducing everybody and then sitting down, I introduced everybody, and then I said, let's start here. And I had their application form for the funding from the CPUC, the California Public Utilities Commission, who administered this program. And I said, here's your application. And right now you are, like number 20 on the funding list. And the way it worked is when projects got close to the money, then they needed to have their plans ready. And so typically the budget each year would cover the first 10 or so projects. If there were big projects at the top, it may only cover 6 or 8 of them. If they were smaller projects, it might cover 10 or 12. But anytime you got in sort of the 15 to 20 range in priority from one year, you needed to get going on your plans and design, because if the money reached down to you, you needed to be ready to go. And I said, we've studied your application. And by the way, the folks on the panel, if there were 5 of them, probably 1 had seen this form. The other 4 had nothing to do with it. So this was like an education for them. And I said, here's your form, and here's how you came number 20 on the list. And having analyzed this, there are at least 3 places where we think you could pick up 2 points, 1 to 2 points, maybe half to 2 points, which would maybe move you up to 15th or 16th on the list and put you in the money. And everybody leaned forward. And in fact, that's exactly what we did. We were selected to do the project. We, in fact, helped them modify and improve their application by really diving into the details, which were not difficult, but instead of just sort of taking standard answers or using averages, we literally calibrated things and dialed this form in. And we moved them up, into the money. And we got that project, which was the Evelyn Avenue overpass. And a year later, we did it again and did Matilda Avenue. And within the next year, we did it again in South San Francisco with Oyster Point. So within 18 months, we had nailed down 3 of these really cool projects. So it's kind of a long story. I'm sorry about that. But the whole point is, we created not only a difference, a distinction among our peers, but we added value in a way that was unexpected and really unparalleled by anybody else in our industry at the time. And I think that's the example I want to bring to you and hopefully inspire you to not just think about personas or messaging or, us too, me too kind of messaging, but really looking at what is it that the buyer is really trying to accomplish, solve, or avoid, and how can we help them in unexpected ways that really advance all of our best interests. I hope you found it interesting. It was a lot of fun. Thanks for watching.